Sunshine! It's Katie from Dark Sunlight. If you're new here, I make videos about bullet journaling, witchy things, and lifestyle in Montreal. If that's something you're into, feel free to subscribe and hit that like button. In this video, I'll be setting up a brand new bullet journal for 2021 and playing around with my new Archer and Olive acrylograph pens. This will be the third Archer and Olive notebook I've bought for bullet journaling. This time I grabbed one of their Halloween collection notebooks back in October. It has the cutest bats on the cover and holographic gilding on the page edges. The reason I keep sticking with Archer and Olive is that I honestly love the quality. I really like the thick paper that allows me to play around a bit more with different mediums without worrying too much about warping the paper or having it bleed or ghost through. I also like how bright white the pages are as opposed to some other brands that use very yellow-toned paper. As you saw, I just used the first page to set up my key, which I don't personally need to reference anymore since I know what my symbols mean, but it's still a page I like to include in the initial setup. Oh boy, even this pen has had enough of 2020. On the right side, I just wanted some sort of artistic cover page for the year. So previous to filming, I sketched in the year in a chunky serif font and added some flowers behind it. I knew I wanted to use my new acrylograph pens to add color to my flower drawing, but I didn't know exactly how, and I hadn't used these pens before, so I didn't quite know how they worked. My first thought was to use only 4 of the colors, 1 for each flower, and just make them into line drawings. Once I had finished making just plain line drawings, I was A, having a bit too much fun playing with these pens, and B, felt like the drawing needed some more depth. So I grabbed one of the darker blues and added some shading into the peony. But then it stood out too much from everything else, so I decided to add some pink into the hibiscus flower. It was at this point that I was kind of getting the hang of how these pens can blend and work together. But then I made a terrible decision. I was trying not to repeat color combinations, so I grabbed the very light greenish blue color to add to the magnolia flower with the pink, and it super clashed and I hated it. Instead of getting too hung up on it, I just moved on and started adding some turquoise to the carnation flower and to the leaves. It was around this point that the sun decided to set and I had to stop filming for the day. So I ended up working on it through the evening and then it was the next day. Lucky for me, the acrylograph pens are super opaque and cover over really well, so I was able to change my mind about the colors a couple times until I was happy. The next spread I set up was my future log. If you're new to bullet journaling and feeling overwhelmed by where to start, I'd say this is probably the most important spread to keep at the beginning of your notebook. It's a place to collect any and all events, birthdays, and holidays for the year, so even though you don't have all the months set up in your bullet journal at the start, you can always book things into the future using this spread. The colors I chose for the month titles here are the same colors I'll use throughout the rest of the spreads, so the months are kind of color-coded. The next spread is my Samhain Tarot spread, which I have at the beginning of all my bullet journals to reference through the year. If you want to know more about it, I have a whole video on how I do the tarot reading itself and how it corresponds to the spread in my bullet journal. I'll link it above. The next spread is more for fun than anything, but I thought it would be nice to have a place to reference the moon phases throughout the year, as well as to have a little legend for what the moon phases mean. On the next spread, I set up my goal tracker. I forget who exactly it was that I saw do their goals this way, but ever since I first saw it, I've been using this layout. I think it's really clever. I find it really easy to use and motivating. Basically, all it is 3 main goal categories, which I left space to write about on the left side page, and then progress bars to color in each time you complete a task in that goal category on the right side page. The next spread probably isn't useful for everyone, but I set up a social growth tracker so that I can see how things like my YouTube channel, Instagram, and Patreon will grow throughout the year. The next spread is super simple. I just used the acrylograph pens to write inspiration in the middle of the spread, and I'll be using these pages as a place to brain dump any fun ideas I have. The next spread is something I've used for years at this point. The left page is an overall health tracker to track things like my period, if and when I'm sick, any doctor or dentist appointments, etc. On the right page, I keep a list of my favorite foods, homemade recipes I find online, and places I like to order in from, so that when I'm uninspired for dinner, I can find an idea from this list. The last page I'll set up is my grid spacing guide. This is an incredibly useful page as well if you're looking for another idea as a beginner. It's just a quick reference guide so you know how many boxes to count when you're dividing up your page for layouts, without having to count every box on the page again. It's also really recommended to keep it on the left side of the spread so you can flip to it and see it easily. I left the right page empty for now. Eventually I want it to just be a fun drawing and/or quote page, but I think I'll leave that for another video. After going back through and adding a few more finishing touches and details, this is how everything turned out. As always, I'll have a full printable of this setup, as well as phone and desktop backgrounds for my patrons, and the printable will also be available in my Etsy store. Both my Patreon and Etsy will be linked below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.